Don't Mix with Water. A Percabeth Alternate Universe Fanfiction, Part 18. Rachel was very confused. Very confused. Annabeth clearly didn't like her, and she had no idea why. Percy and the rest of the guys had mentioned how she was a quiet, reserved person, but nice as ever. Rachel was definitely not getting any of that warm stuff. It was quite obvious. Even some of the boys picked up on the weird feeling. Annabeth wasn't directly rude, just standoffish and colder. The girl she was with all the time, Piper, she seemed more friendly, but they kind of stuck together like glue. And, Rachel was also a girl, so she knew what that meant. And, Annabeth really seemed to avoid her. Rachel was honestly racking her brain on what the heck she could have done to annoy the blonde in the first 10 minutes of meeting. Is she just not a fan of newcomers? Rachel asked. Percy seemed annoying of the answer. I don't know. She's normally pretty nice, he said. Rachel sighed and rolled her eyes. You're no help. I want her to like me. Considering the fact that you two are really good friends, I think that's important in your life too. She nudged aside. She and Percy had been friends since middle school, and even though they weren't as close as before, old friends always had a special bond. They caught up every month or so, but had each other's backs whenever they needed it. Rachel still had no idea where Annabeth stood in Percy's life. She knew it was a tentative place. He blushed when his talks about her went unchecked, but he was also comfortable with her, and they bantered a lot. Rachel had seen his previous crushes, namely, the one on her, and however he was reacting with Annabeth hung in the balance of friend and crush. In the past, Percy would literally trip over his feet around the girl he liked. With Annabeth, he could stay upright, and that was counted as a success. But he really liked being close to her, and Rachel had been debating the whole thing in her mind. The red-haired girl cast a look behind her. They were all at the beach, and Annabeth and Piper were off on their own, speaking in hushed tones. Occasionally she'd notice them looking at her, and it worried her a lot. Hi, she said, coming up to them with a slightly awkward expression and wave. Piper smiled brightly at her. Annabeth waved politely. Do you guys want to come swim with us? Rachel tried. Annabeth shook her head. No, I'm good. Piper, you can go if you want. The girls in front of her exchanged a series of looks. All right, the brunette said unsurely. If you need anything, just call. And Piper was off, leaving Rachel nervous. Rachel and Annabeth looked at each other with small smiles. This was awkward. Now, without Piper as a buffer, Annabeth began to look far off into the distance, clearly not even wanting to make talk with Rachel. It honestly saddened her. Annabeth seemed really cool. Not a huge swimmer? Rachel asked. Annabeth shook her head. No, not really. I tend to stay away from bodies of water, she explained. Rachel raised a brow. And you're friends with Percy? She asked incredulously. Annabeth's expression darkened. Yeah, I am, she said in a different tone of voice. Rachel chewed her lip nervously. Annabeth looked unpleased, and she didn't really seem like the type to be all fluffy when angered. Ever seen Percy surf? Yeah, once, when he invited me. When was that? Beginning of the year. Rachel nodded. Okay, so, this was getting worse. So, why don't you like big bodies of water? She asked. Annabeth motioned to the left. There was a stack of books that Rachel hadn't noticed before. She made a silent O with her mouth. That makes sense. Don't want them to get all soaked, right? She joked. Annabeth smiled tightly but didn't laugh. Good God, how did Percy manage to crack this girl? Rachel searched for another conversation topic. You've seen Percy's board, right? She asked. Annabeth nodded slowly. Do you like it? Annabeth looked puzzled by the question. Sure, the blonde answered unsurely. Rachel's eyes lit up. I painted it. I'm glad you like it. It was my first really big project, she said excitedly. Annabeth raised a brow at her. Really, she said shortly. Rachel's excitement dimmed. Yeah. It flustered her now, how bright she was trying to act when Annabeth clearly didn't like her. The ginger sighed in defeat. There was probably no getting on Annabeth's good side. She may as well stay neutral. With a slight wave, Rachel began to head back to the ocean, disappointed in the lack of progress. An idea suddenly struck her. Why didn't she ask Annabeth what the heck she had done to make her so mad? What did I do? Rachel whirled around. Annabeth looked taken back. Excuse me? She said. Rachel nodded and repeated the question. However, Annabeth provided no answers. I've been back for like 4 days, and I can tell that you really, really don't like me. And honestly, I want you to like me. You're friends with Percy. You seem pretty cool. And I like to meet new people. So what did I do in like 2 days to tick you off so much? Rachel stepped forward and crossed her arms tightly. Annabeth opened her mouth but didn't say a word. However, her eyes flickered behind Rachel. The redhead turned around to see most of their friends laughing and screaming like crazy people. Percy was riding a beach chair in the wave. Why was he doing that? Looking back at Annabeth, Rachel noticed that she had a soft, almost fond expression on her face. Everything suddenly clicked together. You like him? Rachel accused with a smirk. Annabeth whipped her head back. What? She cried. Rachel's smirk grew wider as Annabeth's eyes went spastic. You clearly like him. I get it now. There was almost a laugh in her voice. It was so obvious. Annabeth was into Percy, and she was jealous because no one had really told Annabeth that she even existed, and no one informed her that she and Percy were closed. It all makes sense. I don't, Annabeth said stubbornly. Her nostrils flared with annoyance, but Rachel didn't let up. She tilted her head to a side. I can see right through you. You like Percy. Don't blame you. He's a good guy. And you, she pointed a finger at the blonde, think I'm a threat. Don't worry, I'm not. Like, really not. Annabeth's eyebrows rose in surprise. Rachel laughed at that. Everyone had said that Annabeth was super smart. Clearly, emotions were clouding her judgment, and it formed into anger and annoyance. Me and Percy were best friends back in middle school. I'm anything but into him. I've seen too much of him, I'm afraid. Besides, even if I'm interested, I don't live here, and I don't do long distance. Rachel shuddered at her last relationship. It didn't work out, to put it lightly. Percy's like my brother. I don't want to deal with him. When I say he's clingy, he's clingy. I need my space, you know? I'm a free spirit. Can't have anyone tying me down. Annabeth nodded slowly, and at once, her demeanor seemed more open. Oh. Well. Okay, she said with a bigger smile. Rachel grinned wide. Want to hear some embarrassing stories? That got a huge smile onto Annabeth's face. The blonde motioned for her to come sit next to her. Do tell, she said excitedly. Rachel laughed, ready to share the stories. He did? Yes! Oh my god! I wanted to laugh so badly, but I held it in. It was so hard. Oh my god. I wish someone had recorded that. Honestly, same! As it turned out, Annabeth was great fun to talk to. She was funny and sweet and smart and totally down to earth. Most of Percy's descriptions of her were perfectly fitting. However, he had an added devious, but Rachel was seeing that right now with Annabeth's wicked smirk. "You're gonna gaslight him with that story, aren't you?" Rachel said with a laugh. Annabeth pushed her shoulder playfully. "So what if I am?" the blonde said snarkily. They laughed at Percy's expense. You know, the best kind of laughter if you asked Rachel. Annabeth's eyes floated over to a certain black-haired surfer in the ocean. "I'm pretty sure he likes you. Like 98% sure," Rachel commented idly, looking at her nails. Annabeth's eyes went wide, making the ginger giggle. "I say go for it," Rachel continued. "You think?" Annabeth asked, nervously. Rachel nodded. "Totally. I mean, that's why I mentioned I hadn't ever heard of you when we met. Because Percy had been keeping you a whole secret," she explained. Apparently, Annabeth had taken that sentence in a vicious way. Not that Rachel blamed her. Now that she thought about it, it did sound kind of bad. I'm kind of worried, though," Annabeth admitted, looking to the ground. "We're two very, very different people. It may not work," she said with a sigh. Rachel put a comforting hand on her shoulder and squeezed it. "But if it works, it would be worth it to try."